Two guards grabbed my arms before I had finished my breakfast, and neither one told me why. I did not resist. On this planet, resistance never ended well for a human. My name is Marcus, and for 3 years, I had lived inside the palace of Ithara Prime as the last survivor of a mission that never should have crashed. I had learned one rule above all others. When the guards move fast, you move faster. They pulled me through hallways I had never been allowed to enter. Tall doors opened ahead of us on their own, sensing something in the guards that let them pass. My mind ran through every possible reason. Had I broken a rule I didn't know existed? Had someone finally decided a human guest was more trouble than he was worth? The doors at the end of the hallway were the tallest I had ever seen, carved with symbols that shifted faintly under the light, as if they were alive. The guards pushed them open, and the noise inside hit me like a wave. The hall was full. Every minister, every general, every advisor of the royal court stood in rows, their voices overlapping in sharp, urgent Itharan. At the center of the room, on a raised platform of dark stone, stood Illyra, heir to the entire Ithara dominion. I had seen her only a few times in 3 years. She never mixed with palace guests. She never had a reason to. She was holding a book. Not a screen, not a data disk, an actual book. Its cover faded to the color of old ash, its pages thin as breath. The room fell silent the moment she raised her hand. "Bring him closer," she said. The guards walked me to the base of the platform. Up close, I could see her eyes were wide. All 4 of them, the 2 large ones in front, and the 2 smaller ones on the sides, that most Itharans use to sense danger from behind. All 4 were fixed on me, and none of them looked calm. "Do you know this text?" she asked, turning the book so I could see the open page. I expected symbols I couldn't read. Instead, my eyes adjusted, and something clicked into place. Underneath the strange Itharan markings was a pattern I recognized, a cipher laid over something older. Latin. Formal, careful Latin, the kind you find carved into old churches, the kind my grandmother used to read from a small leather book she kept locked in a drawer. And there, near the bottom of the page, was a name. Marcus. Not a rough guess at the sound. The exact old spelling, letter for letter. The same spelling carved into a stone plaque in my grandmother's home village. A spelling almost no one used anymore, not even in my own family. "Where did this come from?" I asked, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Illyra stepped down from the platform. A ripple of shock passed through the ministers behind her. Apparently, princesses did not leave that platform for guests. "This book was found 200 years ago," she said, drifting inside a wrecked ship at the far edge of our system. The ship had no markings my ancestors could identify, no engine my engineers could explain. We assumed it belonged to some vanished race, long gone before any of us were born. For 200 years, my scholars tried to break its code. Yesterday, for the first time, they succeeded. She held the book toward me, and I saw her hand was not steady. "It is not a message from a vanished race, Marcus. It is a record of a bloodline, a record that names a person and ends with that name, on purpose, as if the writer knew exactly who would read it one day." Behind her, the ministers began speaking over one another, and this time I understood enough words to feel a chill move down my back. One phrase came up again and again, the old promise. Illyra raised her hand again, and the room quieted, though not fully. "There is a passage further in," she said, "that speaks of a choice. It says that when this bloodline returns, and speaks its true name inside these halls, the Dominion will face a decision that decides whether we survive what is coming." For 200 years, half this court believed the passage was only a story. The other half built their entire strategy around it being true. I did not expect to test it during my own reign. I certainly did not expect the answer to be a human my grandfather kept as a curious guest. Every eye in the hall turned to me. I felt the floor tilt under a life I had built out of quiet routines and low expectations. "I don't know anything about a promise," I said. "I fixed communication systems for a living. My family comes from a small place most maps don't bother to label. I don't know why my name is in that book." "And yet," Illyra said, "someone carrying your exact name, your exact bloodline marker, crossed a distance no ship of that era should have survived. over 1,000 years ago, and left this book at the edge of our system. Whether by plan or by accident, you are now the center of a question that has shaped policy in this dominion for 2 centuries. Half this court staked their careers on you being a myth. The other half staked theirs on you being real. Now you are standing in front of them, and neither side knows what to do with you. A tall minister stepped forward, his voice sharp. Princess, this is reckless. We cannot base the fate of 100 worlds on the word of one outsider. Another voice answered from the opposite side of the room. And we cannot ignore 2 centuries of preparation, because it frightens you now that the moment has arrived. The argument grew louder, spreading through the hall like fire jumping between dry branches. I stood in the middle of it, forgotten for a moment, though I knew that moment would not last. Alira turned back to me, ignoring the noise behind her. There is a threat approaching this system, Marcus. Not a rumor, not a theory. A fleet from beyond our borders has been gathering for months, and our defenses are not ready to face it alone. My scholars believe this book was left as a warning, and as a key to an alliance no one alive today fully understands. I need to know if you are part of that key, or if this is only a strange accident of history. My chest tightened. I thought of the years I had spent quietly surviving, never asking for attention, never wanting to be more than a guest who kept his head down. Now an entire court was staring at me, waiting for an answer that could change the future of 100 worlds. What happens if I say no? I asked. What happens if I tell you I'm just an engineer, and none of this means what you think it means? Alira's expression did not change, but her voice grew quieter. Then we prepare for the fleet without the answer we hoped for, and I return to ruling a court that will spend years arguing over what almost was. But I do not think that is your answer, Marcus. I think you are afraid of what it means if I am right. She was correct, and I hated that she was correct. A young advisor named Owen stepped forward from the crowd, holding a second, smaller book, its cover newer than the first. Princess, there is more. The final chapter was translated only this morning. It names not one person, but 2, one from each side of the old alliance. It says the bloodline cannot act alone. The hall went completely silent. Alira looked at Owen, then at me, then back at the small book in his hands. Read it, she said. Owen opened the fragile pages carefully, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. The bond will not hold through blood alone. It will hold through choice, made freely, by one who carries the name, and one who carries the crown. Every minister in the room turned toward Alira. She did not look away from me. It seems, she said, that this decision was never mine to make by title. It was always meant to be a choice, made together, or not made at all. I felt the weight of every eye in that hall, the weight of a fleet gathering somewhere beyond the stars, the weight of a name I never asked to carry. But I also felt something else, something steadier underneath the fear. For 3 years, decisions had been made about me, around me, without me. This was the first time anyone had actually asked what I wanted. I never asked to be part of an old promise, I said, loud enough for the whole hall to hear. I still don't fully understand what this book claims about me, but I know what it feels like to be judged by something written before I was even born. So before I agree to anything, I want to read the rest of that book myself. Every page, every word. If I am going to make a choice that affects 100 worlds, I want to understand exactly what I am choosing. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Alira did something that made the entire hall gasp. She smiled. Fair, she said. More than fair. Bring him every page we have translated, and every page we have not. Let him read the truth for himself before he decides. The ministers began to whisper again, but this time the tension in their voices had shifted, from fear of the unknown to something closer to hope. Alira turned to face them, her voice carrying across the entire hall. The fleet is coming, whether we are ready or not. But for the first time in 200 years, we are no longer guessing at what this book means. We have someone who can help us translate, not just its words, but its purpose. She looked at me one last time, her 4 eyes calm now, steady. Let's find out together, she said, exactly what your ancestors left behind for us to find, and whether it is enough to save every world watching this moment unfold. I did not know what waited in the rest of that book, or what the coming fleet would bring. But for the first time since my ship went down, I felt like I was not just surviving someone else's story, I was finally about to help write my own.